Hey everybody, my name's Alyssa and thanks for tuning in to God and Hip Hop, where each week we're going to take a specific song and I want to share with you two things. One, artists that aren't necessarily noted as Christian artists with Christian songs, but artists that are talking about God. And we need to talk about them talking about God. And number two, I'm doing this series because I want you to see that you can find God everywhere. If you're tuned in, you can find the God and the good in just about anything. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, like, comment, and share. Thanks.
Would we feel no pain? Would we feel no pain? Would we feel no pain? God must feel no pain. Something's got a hold on me. Only joy. Does this mean even our suffering pleases him?
And tonight on God and Hip Hop, we are going to go over one of my favorites, obviously, Mr. J.Cole, and one of his new songs off his album KOD, which recently dropped. If you haven't already listened to the album, listen to it because he's an amazing artist. And if you haven't researched all of the deep hidden meanings from the album, take 5 minutes, Google it, because album KOD has so many different hidden meanings and he's really just trying to unglorify all of these crazy things that have become a norm in today's society that doesn't seem right. So it's a really good message. So look him up, check out the album, really cool songs, always good music from him. I love J. Cole personally, one of my favorites, so I'm gonna support him and tell you to watch him just like I do. Alright guys, so on this album, there's a song called Once an Addict. Technically the song is about his mother who, after his stepfather left her, she became alcoholic to drown her pain away, and he always just felt bad that he didn't do more. So it's a cool song, but what got my attention and what made me want to talk about this was there's a question on the introduction that I had to find the biblical answer to, okay? So check this out. The introduction starts and a woman comes in and says, "Sometimes I think pain is just a lack of understanding." True story. If we could only understand it all, would we feel no pain? God must feel no pain, only joy. Does that mean even our suffering pleases him? Interesting question for this song. That's what I'm trying to prove to you in this series. When you hear a song and you hear a question like that, if you don't know the answer, you go find the answer, which is what I did, because I knew the answer, but I don't know the biblical answer to this, okay? So here's my thought process. I went into the back of my Bible and looked up the word suffering because, one, I understand that no, God doesn't just feel joy. God has many emotions, mainly because he created emotions. He created everything, and he doesn't just feel joy. Sometimes he feels angry and you see his wrath. Sometimes he forgives you and you see his love. Sometimes he feels joy. Sometimes he feels sorrow. He has many emotions, so he doesn't just feel joy all the time. And we also know clearly God does not enjoy our suffering. It doesn't please him when we suffer through things. He has so many different reasons for our suffering and our pain. There's purposes in every event that we go through, which is what I'm going to illustrate today. But God has such a bigger picture in mind. He has to worry about this big picture. And whatever collateral damage he has us go through to learn life lessons or to get from here to here to help other people or whatever the case is, in the grand scheme of things, he's still focused on his plan. So it doesn't please him, but he has to think higher and understand that this has to happen so this can happen. That's my take on it, at least. Now, I went to the back of my Bible to look up the word suffering so I could find my answer. And most of the suffering stories were found in Job. So I was like, okay, cool, let me go read Job. Never read it before. Let me tell you how J. Cole ties this in. Remember the question was, does our suffering please God? Job chapter 10 verse 3, Job's asking God, does it please you to oppress me? Interesting. Ties in, right? Okay. Alright guys, so let me tell you the story about Job. Job is a crazy story. If you haven't read Job in the Bible, read it. It's a little lengthy, little old-timey words, might be hard to read. Look up a summary, look up a different version online. Whatever you need to do to read it, okay? Get your life together, read it. Super cool message. Alright. So Job lived in the East, and basically he was one of the wealthiest men out there. I mean, he was super rich, let's say millionaire status back in Bible days. I don't know what that equates to, but dude was a millionaire, right? He had a whole bunch of land, he had a whole bunch of animals on this farm, I guess. He had 10 kids, huge family, huge house. He had everything that he could ever ask for. And this was a good dude. He was called in the Bible to be a blameless man, one that feared the Lord and shunned evil. He was a good, humble guy, just so happened to be wealthy. Regular, schmegular guy, good guy, not a corrupt rich man. Okay, so Job's just chilling, unbeknownst to him. On the other side of the world, the devil somehow meets up with God. And God's like, hey, what you been up to? And the devil's like, hey, I've just been walking around the earth, just chilling, walking around, just looking for someone to, fool away from you. And God says, hey, I got this guy over here, Job. He's the most blameless, honest, humble guy that follows me. Have you checked him out? And Satan says, hold on. I see that you gave him all these blessings. You gave this man everything he could ever need. He's rich, he has a huge family, he's got all these animals. That's the only reason he follows you. I bet you, God, I bet you if I take it all away, he'll curse you. And God, knowing who God is and knowing who his child Job was and how Job would react, told the devil, cool, go ahead, do your worst. Because again, God will allow the devil to work in your life to his extent. God has all the authority. So the devil most definitely took him up on that offer. So Job basically lost everything he ever had and owned all in one day. It's crazy how he lost it all. Like, he basically had 4 different messengers, like, at the same time running and telling him, like, hey, bro, this fire just broke out and you just lost a whole bunch of stuff. Oh my gosh, we just got robbed. Oh, this wind just blew in this house that your kids were in it. Everybody died. Everything was gone. Everything burned up. You have nothing now, Job. And poor Job was like, okay, I don't know what just happened, but let me strip my clothes, shave my head, let me get naked, let me get on the floor, and let me start praying. It didn't faze Job, okay? Job was still faithful to God, as God knew he would be. So now the devil's pissed off, like, okay, surely I thought that would work. Clearly it didn't. Then he finds his loophole. He's like, hold on, God, I didn't take everything from him. He has his health. Let me make him sick and see if he doesn't curse you then. So God's like, all right, go ahead, do your worst, but leave him alive. I still know my son, and I know he's going to be fine. So the devil goes, and now poor Job lost it all, has boils all over his body, very painful boils. And his wife is like, man, you should curse God. Like, at this point, I don't even know why you're praying to God. And I feel like if I were Job, I would have turned to her. And just like Will Smith said to his wife in the Pursuit of Happiness movie, I would have told my wife, don't be weak. Don't be weak. Okay, lesson of the day. So then Job sat in silence with his friends for 7 days. His friends came through, were like, hey homie, heard you lost it all, your life's in shambles, let's sit. And he was like, I want to sit in silence for 7 days and pray. And again, 7 is always an important number in the Bible. So on the 7th day, Job starts a conversation up. He starts finally talking, and his friends, to the best of their ability, were trying to help him and trying to give him godly advice that they thought would help him in this time of need, which we all do. I want to make a good note here. A lot of times when our friends are suffering or going through things, we want to help them so much that we feel like we should be the advice givers, and sometimes you're just called to be a comforter. Sometimes you just need to go hug a friend. So sometimes when your friends are in need, guys, you should stop first. Stop and pray. Ask God, God, am I just called to comfort my friend, or do you want me to share with them a message? Am I supposed to share with them some advice? Why don't you ask God that? Because really God's the only one that knows what your friend needs, not you. So ask God, then go help and comfort your friend, or tell them what advice you think they need. Okay, cool. Let me tell you why that didn't work in Job's case. Because Job's 3 friends did not follow that advice. Job's 3 friends thought they knew it all. They gave correct biblical theology advice. However, it wasn't applicable, because unbeknownst to Job's friends, just like Job doesn't know, all of that Job is going through is literally just so God can prove the devil wrong. Nobody knows this but God and the devil, okay? That's literally the only reason Job's going through this. But his friends don't know that. So his friends try to come help. His friends try to help by giving him advice. The first friend says, man, God doesn't just take everything away like that. You had to have sinned. You have a secret sin you're holding on to, and you need to repent for it. And Job's like, no, bro, I'm a pretty humble guy. If I mess up, I mess up, and I talk to God about it then. So not the case. The second friend is like, look, man, you had too much stuff. God had to have thought you were selfish, so he took it all away from you. And Job again is like, I don't really think that's the case. I'm not a selfish guy. And furthermore, there's plenty of rich people out there in the world with more than me that are actually selfish people and not following God. And I don't see them getting divinely punished. So that logic doesn't make sense in my scenario. Cool. So the third friend says, well, your kids brought the death upon themselves because they had sinned. Somebody sinned and everyone's being punished. And Job's like, bro, that's not the case. Like, I hear you, I understand that logic, but that's not what's happening. I know me and I know my kids. Like, no, we're not perfect, but we love and follow God. So that's not the case. He even tells them, I'm not a stupid and godless man. And his friends get mad. His friends are like shoving this advice down his throat. It's you, your fault, you gotta repent. It's all you, take my advice. They get real angry. So they basically go back and forth over a couple of chapters, just arguing with each other. And I'm like, this poor guy, Job, his friends are just like telling him, you messed up, instead of just being there for him. This guy lost everything. Just be there for him. So at this point, as you can imagine, I think Job is just so exhausted from talking to his friends. He's just frustrated. He's been praying to God. He switches his prayer up. Now he's like venting / complaining to God. Now he starts pondering all these life questions. So when J.Cole put that intro on his song, Job was the first person in history, I guess, that asked God these same questions. Like, God, I don't understand how you pick and choose who suffers in life. And clearly you've already, decided that I'm someone that should suffer. So my words to you are meaningless. What point is it for me to sit here and try to bargain with you? You've already made your decision. Then he starts second guessing himself. I don't even think I can talk to you. I need someone to intercede because clearly I'm not good enough and I don't even understand what's going on with me to understand what to even ask you. The man that was praying to God after every single thing he owned was lost, who got down on his knees and started immediately praying to God, at that point, now because his friends ruined his mind and diluted his mind, all of a sudden thinks, I can't talk to you directly again. Now I need someone else to talk to you through me so we can figure this out. You see what sometimes your friends can harm you sometimes if they're feeding you the wrong information. It can give you doubts and worries. So Job's mind was transformed after all of this. So now he's talking to God and he believes that he's worthless. He's not even worthy to talk to God. And he's questioning God. And that's why in Job 3:10 he starts asking God, does it please you to oppress me? Like, what's the point of this? I don't even understand. Just end it. Just take me. Why am I even alive? So Job is at his low point, clearly. Now, a fourth friend comes in the mix, and the fourth friend was the coolest of all friends. He wasn't that pushy. He was pretty legit, and he basically tells Job, I think you're thinking too much into it, and now you're like questioning God, so you're kind of rebelling at this point. Just try to use this as an opportunity to get closer to God. Maybe that's what he's doing. Again, fourth friend's advice, biblically accurate, theologically could be right, closest to what was actually happening. But still, nobody knew why Job was actually going through this. It had nothing to do with any of that. So then God answers Job. So one thing I want to make a big note on is, when God answered Job, he answered a lot of questions for him. He never told Job, I'm doing this thing with Satan and we used you because I knew you'd be faithful and obedient to me no matter what I did to you. He never told Job that. Because God is our Father. And like a parent, God knows what's best for us. God doesn't have to explain every little single detail on why. When your kids come and ask you, but why this, why this? You don't have to explain everything to them because you're the parent. You know what's best and you know they don't need to do that. And that's what God was doing with Job. He didn't need to explain all these fine details. He just knew, I'm your Father, I got you. Just chill, wait it out, roll with the flow, and know who I am. Remember who I am and know that I got you. I'm your parent, I'm your Father. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. I won't abandon you. When I take you to your low, I'll pick you back up to your highs. Don't worry. But Job was, like any human would be, frustrated. He was upset. He didn't understand what's going on, questioning God. So God wanted to answer him. And our God is a savage God, if you didn't know. God basically answered him in a bunch of rhetorical questions. And I guess if you didn't know our God, you might think like, that is super sarcastic and rude. Like, why can't he just tell him what's happening? But God wanted him to understand the bigger picture reason. We don't need to know all these little details sometimes. That's what God works out. Sometimes we just need to focus on the bigger picture. So let me explain how God answered Job back. God answers Job with several rhetorical questions, proving that Job not only doesn't know what God does and why he does it, but he doesn't even understand the smallest of details that God has done. So we don't know what God's doing. We can't. We don't understand him. He's too big for us to understand. He gave us all this wisdom in here so we could get a glimpse and try to understand as much as we can that he allows us to understand. But he still has the final say in everything. All right, so first of all, our savage God starts off by telling Job, first of all, who is it that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Now, I don't know how I would have felt if I were Job right then. I've just been venting and complaining, and then God's like, I'm about to question you. I'd be like, oh my gosh, now I'm this small, okay. But here's what our savage God tells Job. Here's a few key verses, but again, read the last few chapters. It's profound. God is talking himself, and God tells Job, hey man, who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? Have you entered the storehouses of the snow or seen the storehouses of the hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to place where the lightning is dispersed, or place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain? Can you raise your voice to the clouds and cover yourself in a flood of water? Then God talks about a lot of specific details on why he created animals with the things that they have that we probably think are random details, but he has a very specific purpose for each and every single thing he's done and has ever done on earth, because that's who God is. He thinks about all that. So super long information about a bunch of animals. Then Job answers God back. He says, God, I'm unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. Then God again says, brace yourself. I'm about to keep asking you questions, and I want you to answer me. So then God goes into a little bit more specifics. God said, would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? Then he starts talking about some of the big beasts he's made in the world and why he made them the way that they are, like the behemoth and the leviathan, which I believe my Bible says it's talking about like a hippopotamus and a crocodile, and how he made the skin so hard it can't be pierced, stuff like that. He's explaining that he made all these animals very specifically the way that they are, for different purposes that we've never even thought of, right? After God asked Job all of these many questions, do you understand how the world works? Do you understand how my earth works? Do you understand how these animals are made? And Job replies again and says, surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now and I will speak. I will question you and you shall answer me. My ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. So now Job's like, okay, God, you know what? You're right. You got it. You are so right. I don't understand how any of these details work. I don't understand how rain works, how thunder works, how animals work. I can't understand that because you created these things. So if I can't understand these fine details, how am I supposed to understand your plan for me? But I know now that you have a specific plan for me, just like you had a specific plan for all of these things. Through all of that, Job was just a pawn in teaching the devil that he still has no power. But Job also learned a great life lesson. Job was like, look, God gave me all these blessings before. I need to just trust him and know if he takes it away, that he still has something good in store for me, that he's still working in my life and he's still there. So understand sometimes your suffering is for a much bigger purpose. Job would have never known the purpose of his pain was to prove the devil wrong because he was obedient. That's it. That is it. And the other cool thing was God was like, hey, your three friends, I know they were trying to give you my biblical advice, but I don't like the way that they did that. They were giving you wrong advice. They were accusatory, and that's not how I want me to be depicted. If anyone's going to give me as advice, it needs to come from a place of love, not a place of blame. So your friends need to give a burnt offering to me, and I want you, Job, to pray for them. And once you pray for them, then their sins can be forgiven. So he was able to still show his friends yeah, y'all steered me wrong. You made me quite doubtful, and now God's confirming you guys were in the wrong. After that, if this whole story isn't crazy enough, after that, God's like, all right, everything's good now. Devil knows he's never gonna win. Haha, good try. And he gives Job back everything he had before times 10. He has an even bigger family, an even bigger house, even more animals. He turns into a super billionaire at this point. He gets everything back times 10. The guy lives to be like 140 years old. All is well. And all of that I got to give to you from hearing an intro clip on a J.Cole song that asked the question, does God feel joy when we suffer? That led me to Job asking God the same thing. J. Cole song led me to Job. There's God everywhere. God in hip-hop. There is literally God everywhere you look if your eyes and ears are peeled. Now when I'm having a bad day, guess what? When I feel like I'm suffering, I can go look outside and look up at a cloud and remember that I don't even know how this cloud works. I don't know how the rain works. I don't know. Science can explain it, cool. I don't know how these storehouses of rain works according to God and what he told Job. So let me not question God and just trust him and know that he has my back. Those are the life lessons I'm trying to get you guys to learn. Alright guys, well that's all for tonight's God in Hip Hop message. Again, we went over J. Cole's Once an Addict song. Check out him, check out his album, check out the hidden meanings of his album, this song, and read Job and change your life. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you guys.